As we have the necessary number of people, I declare this session open that is taking place here on the 6th of August 2025. The current meeting is for the public audience with the objective of discussing the panorama of Brazilian presidents on the COP30 at the epicenter of the climate crisis in defense of multilateralism. I'd like to inform that simultaneous translation will be on channel 2 for Portuguese and 4 for English and 6 for Spanish. The event integrates the second Parliamentary Summit for climate transition, change and fair transition from Latin America and Caribbean. Part of this table, we have Senator Alfonso de Rieste Longton, President of the Commission of the Environment, Climate Change, and National Goods of the Senate of the Republic of Chile. Welcome. Senator Edith Terenzi, President of the Commission of Environment and Sustainable Development of the Senate of Argentina. Welcome. And participating online, Ms. Anatoni, Executive Director of COP30. The debate will be divided in two parts, starting the debate between the Commission on Environment of the Brazilian, Argentine, and Chilean Senate on our role on construction, consolidation, and important negotiations that will be taken to COP30. We then hear Madam Anatoni on the role of the Brazilian COP30 presidency. As we always do, this session will be interactive. It will be broadcast live and open to participants by those that are interested through the e-citizenship portal on the internet or the address senado.leg.br/e-cidadania or through the phone 0800 061 2211. I would like to clarify for the foreign parliamentarians that in Brazilian Senate, we make it available that any citizen to manifest themselves and participate of the public audiences at this, so that they can send questions and manifest themselves that are open to all at the page. The answers of these are connected exact moment and it's of activity. Get to know this really important popular participation tool in Brazil. I would like to thank all the people that participated of the e-citizenship participants, as well as the questions of the CEPAL ICLAC itself.
Senhoras e senhores parlamentares, colegas e convidados.
Dear parliamentarians, colleagues, and civil servants of this House and all that follow us. First, I'd like to wish a good morning to all and welcome the parliamentarians of about 20 countries here present, as well as my Brazilian parliamentarian colleagues. A great honor to receive in this parliament representatives of such an important strategic bloc for our social and environmental questions. We are not just geographically neighbors, but also common history marked by structural challenges, resistance of our peoples, and a cultural richness that creates Latin America and Caribbean a vibrant, diverse region that is profoundly connected. To receive you here is also to recognize that this meeting is more than institutional commitment. It's a political gesture where the world lives a decisive moment where cooperation between global South countries every time more necessary to give proper answers to the crisis we are facing. We have a unique opportunity to reaffirm our collective role in transformation of based on social justice, environmental balance, and respect of future generations. It is important, however, to recognize the specificities of our region. Despite contributing for less 10% of global emission of greenhouse gases, we are one of the most vulnerable regions to the impact of climate change. This vulnerability is even deeper when we look at the economic profile that is still very dependent of exploring natural resources for the structural inequality that marks our societies and for the low resilience of many of our facing the ever more severe disasters. ECLAC has launched one more of its relevant studies, reaffirming that we already face on our daily basis. Latin America and Caribbean face persistent issues to retake sustainable development. We call upon to have a closer look at social inequality, low economic mobility, rich is concentration, fragility of investments in strategic sectors. And therefore, it's ever more urgent to mobilize resources and political will to face these historical issues, promotes social justice, and is aligned to ecologic transition that our times demand. It's impossible to the economic and climate trends that are being undertaken. Climate crisis already affects directly agricultural productivity, energy security, urban infrastructure, and public health that are main pillars of Latin American and Caribbean economies. To invest in a low carbon economy is not just an environmental demand, but is a concrete opportunity to transform our economies, broadening dignified work and building a development movement that joins social justice, sustainability, and it's in this context the COP30 as an essential benchmark. 33 years after ECO 92 that took place in Rio de Janeiro, 20 years after the Protocol of Kyoto, and 10 years since the Paris Agreement. At the same time, while it has a strong historical symbolism, COP30 reminds us with urgency the need to transform engagements in concrete results. The climate clock is running faster than the scientists expected. We believe that the 1.5-degree increase would only reach 2030, but it already took place last year. The biggest enemy now is time. Within this context, Latin America and Caribbean face even two further issues: the great vulnerability facing climate change, especially, and the social inequality, economic ones that make the education strategy even more difficult. At the same time, we are a region with a lot of potential to lead. We have environmental strengths, cultural diversity, and a series of traditional knowledge that can be valued in the transition. Brazil bets on this potential, proposing to the world the multilateralization inspired in our own values, the mutirão or group cooperation, a collective action based on cooperation, dialogue, and solidarity. This proposal is not just symbolic, but responds to a concrete reality. Climate crisis can only be faced with coordinated action between governments, companies, civil society, and traditional community. This change must be led by us, countries of the global south. It's possible to develop our own technologies and guarantee that we participate of all the steps of the value chains that involve this transition. It's not enough to export natural resources. You need and want to show the world that we are more than just suppliers of. The moment needs courage and lucidity. We live a new reality imposed by climate change that already affects all of society in health, education, infrastructure, economy, and food safety. Within this context, the parliaments have a central role. We must revise, improve, in many cases, rebuild our legislation so that we can be at the able to respond to our needs nowadays. This means looking transversally at public policies, guaranteeing that every sector act with environmental responsibility, social justice, and a view to the future. It's up to us legislators to ensure that the answers to climate crisis can be reflected in the legal benchmarks in public budgeting and the national priorities, with special attention to the populations in vulnerable situations and strengthening democracy. Fair transition is going to be done not just with objectives and discourses, speeches, but with effective laws and articulated political action. This plenary, we have the representation of our region, of our diversity. This alone is already a strong message. What we build together here can strengthen climate multilateralism that is necessary and push legislative action in our countries. That this public hearing be a space of articulation, dialogue, joint building, and that they send a clear message to the parliaments of the Latin American and Caribbean that they are attentive, engaged, and committed to act. We have no more time to lose, but we have what is more important, the responsibility for our peoples, the courage to take difficult decisions, and the hope that, yes, it is possible to change the path of this story. Thank you very much.
Bom dia, eu queria pedir a compreensão de todos os participantes.
Good morning. I would request for your understanding, but Madam Ana Tongi is saying that she will not be able to stay here very long. She'll request that we change the order, so I will hand over to her so that she can speak. So I have Ana Tongi, Executive Director or CEO of COP30. Good morning, Senator. Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to be back at the Senate with our Chilean and Argentinian representatives at this moment for this important debate. I think that your initial words on how to bring the climate issue in a transversal manner to public politics, I would say also public policies and also private policies of this private sector, is exactly what we hope COP30 can be, this big platform to be able to debate on how ensure that all public policies can deal and make sure that the climate question become transversal. From the perspective of the COP30 presidency, we see that Belém COP is going to be a fundamental COP for us to start implementing and ensuring the acceleration of the implementation of the Paris Agreement. In the first decade of the Paris Agreement, we have legislated, since we're in this house, let's say, legislating all the rulings of the legal framework of the Paris Agreement, that in the last COP, in COP29, this framework of the Paris Agreement was finalized with the decisions related to the carbon market and financing. And now it's up to COP30 that is going to take place in Brazil to start a new decade and a new decade of implementation and refining this regulation, climate regulation. What are the fundamental topics that will be at COP30? First of all, we have subjects that are mandated by the UN organizations and the convention parts so that they can be refined. That are going to be very important for Latin American that has prioritized and the two topics is fair transition, just transition, and adaptation. They are a priority. We've been talking a lot with our Latin American partners about the COP30. And as much as fair, just transition as adaptation are being seen by all the countries of the region as a fundamental subject, they have mandated to debate this, and they're going to be definitely one of the pillars for COP30. And the third subject is fundamental for the region, with which we have also been talking, is climate financing. If we want to ensure that climate can become a transversal part of public and policies, we have to have the resources to be able to do this as well. And then it's been decided in the last copy that the amount that was previously of $100 billion that should be mobilized from developed countries to developing countries has gone from 100 to 300. Seems like there's a big advance because the resources have increased threefold, but in reality, the demand for the developing countries is huge. The numbers are big. But we have requested the president of COP29 and 30 have brought a new report on how to mobilize $1.3 trillion. This report that is going to be submitted by the president of COP30 and 29 will not be a negotiated text, but we know that resources exist to deal with climate change. Unfortunately, they are not being allocated, assigned to the developing countries or for other subjects that we're seeing with the several other countries are being assigned and allocated for war issues where they quickly found huge resources for that kind of expenditure. So it's necessary that we go back to the financial subject to ensure the mobilization of resources of developed countries towards developing countries, be it for mitigation, energy transition, of protecting our forests, and of people that are taking care of our forests, as well as adaptation actions that are so important. And climate change has very quickly arrived to our homes. I'd like to emphasize that this is a copy of the implementation and acceleration that needs to reflect the urgency of climate change that we are already observing in terms of floods, heat waves, droughts that are already affecting the Latin American countries in a great manner, be in cities, agriculture, or obviously in energy. A lot of our energy comes from hydroelectrics, and with droughts we also suffer. We will very soon, towards the end of the month, on the 25th and 26th of August, by invitation of the Mexican government, a meeting with all the ministers of the environment and climate of the region to discuss the priorities of the region for COP30. We have already been doing this research on the subject of fair, just translation, adaptation, financing are already subjects that the region has already clearly established the priority, but we're going to go deeper into these debates at the end of this month in Mexico.
Finally, I would also like to mention that they are not 2 weeks of meetings, international meetings, only based upon the negotiations or in a refining of the international regulations that already exist. The COPs have become the largest meeting of the UN, in which the presence of the private sector, of the subnational government, of the civil society, of the social movements is essential. It's with this active participation of our society that the implementation is going to take place. When we think about implementation, we also we need that all of the stakeholders be participating of this huge global effort against climate changes. And so when it comes to COP30, an action agenda that is extremely robust so that the private sector and the subnational governments and the civil society can get involved. There are 30 key goals. Among these 30 key goals, we didn't get them out of our hats or based on our desires. No, we analyzed what was done during COP28. It was a world balance. Great negotiations were done, agreements as well in the industry of energy, trying to have renewable energy, eliminate fossil fuels, and so forests, when it comes to forests and deforestation, plant trees, cover degraded areas, all of these topics that have been agreed upon in COP28, we brought to the action agenda, and now private sector, the subnational governments, the civil society, so that they can bring solutions when it comes to the implementation of these large and huge goals. So COP30 has this novelty. We are working close to our partners, our neighbors in Latin America. We are involving them so that we can implement these major goals. And obviously, since it is a global effort, it involves everybody and all of the parliaments bringing their solutions with their own pieces of legislation. And this is essential so that at the national level, these policies may move forward. So the international agreements that are so important, they are going to fill in the gaps if the parliaments cannot reflect and make it more agile, create the pieces of legislation with more agility so that the nationally determined goals, they can be implemented. So the role of the parliaments, of the senates, they are essential when it comes to the implementation phase of the international agreements. And I'm really happy that the CEO of COP30 has been working closely with the Brazilian Senate, with the Brazilian National Congress, and we hope to have the active participation of the members of parliament, the Congress people, the senators during COP30, developing what is going to be the role of the parliaments in accelerating the climate actions. I'm totally at your disposal to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you very much, Ms. Anatoni, Executive Director, CEO of COP30. Thank you for your participation. And at this moment, I would like to pass the floor to Senator Edith Terezin, President of the Environment and Sustainable Development Commission from Argentina. You have 10 minutes, ma'am. Well, hello. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. Please allow me to first thank the hosts. Thank you very much to you, Mr. Chair, the welcome and warm reception you have given to us in this brother nation. We have shared many stories throughout time. And also, especially, I would like to thank ECLAC because thanks to them, we could ensure today my participation in the summit. Without their help, it would have been impossible for me to be here. But it's an honor to be in front of all of you today. In this panel, in which we are meeting the environment commissions of our parliaments, we have many, many concepts that have been acknowledged as important so that we can discuss them during the summit. And we have been talking about especially the need to have global actions that are totally coordinated. And I believe that within the environment commissions of our countries, we have the possibility of sharing some general references because throughout the panels, and the different debates and chats we're going to have on these 2 days, we're going to mention some issues more specifically. So therefore, I would like to make a general overview that has to do with how the parliaments, we can add the priorities of COP30, mainly how to reinforce the climate multilateralism and translate the international agreements into public policies. And today, based on this question or vision that we have to answer among us, and how we can strengthen the climate multilateralism in such a fragmented political scenario. And I would like to take this opportunity to say that Ms. Anatoni is listening to us and that she's part of this conversation, because exactly I'm talking about priorities for COP30. And I believe that I need to share some of the private questions that I have and that my country is going through, Argentina, the issues that Argentina is going through. We have a key topic for the Argentinian lawmakers, the need to strengthen this multilateralism, this climate multilateralism, and I insist or emphasize this, our geopolitical scenario. And why am I mentioning this? Certainly, many of you know, or that you are the position that the current president of China has when it comes to climate changes. I believe you are aware of this. He denies. And so he denies that there are climate changes, and so he's calling the summit of resistance. And Argentina is going through some times of resistance when it comes to these realities. He's denying a president that we have been following up for many, many initiatives, and he's placing us in a difficult situation when it comes to the decisions that he has been making, and they have an important reach in these environmental issues. I'm going to share 2 examples with you so that we can show you the magnitude of the situation being faced by Argentina. For example, in September of 2024, before the UN Assembly, the president of Argentina, he said, I'm not going to be connected to the future pact any longer. Argentina wants to have wings to develop itself without being subjected to the undue weight of these agendas that go against our goals. And so he made official he was leaving the WHO, and the Argentinian president talked about the environmental agenda as being promoted by Marxists. And within this context, he said that he was considering removing Argentina from the Paris Agreement. And Argentina rectified it in 2016, the Paris Agreement. And starting in 2023, the official representations of Argentina not only they were competing with multilateral spaces that were discussing in the environment, and they were removed from these spaces, in fact. I apologize for the self-reference, but since we are talking about the Environmental Commission of the Argentinian Parliament, this concerns us, the legislators in Argentina. It also concerns me the high number of members of parliament, of how much power the executive branch is having when it comes to facing the climate changes. So the challenge that we're facing now is huge, as you can see, and we need to find answers, responses, so that we can go along this resistance path, so that you guys can consider us a country that is part of this wonderful continent. And we need help. We need help to find out how we're going to be able to cooperate and achieve the goals based on this situation that is so difficult that we're going through. The question is, how would we work, or how could the parliaments or the legislative branches advance and sustain our priorities when we have disparities with our executive branches? This would be a first question that I would like to ask COP30. And furthermore, and this is important because besides the resistance, I'm talking refugee, and Argentina is going to need to find G for so that it can create its own public policy to try to reach the subnational governments, the provinces, the territories, because it is the crisis happens, and who suffers with the crisis? The territories, the people. You know that Argentina is a federation, and so the provinces, so our subnational governments, the provinces, they have the ownership of our natural resources based on our constitution that was amended in 1994. So this refugee or resistance we truly need, and this is something I would like to ask you so that we can debate this during COP30. We need to strengthen provincial projects. We need to strengthen national projects, of course, that support the transition so that we can move towards a greener economy. And I have a very simple example to share with you what I'm talking about. I'm going to talk about my province. I come from the province of Chubut. It is located in the Argentinian Patagonia. And in the last 2 years, for instance, we have started regulating, and we have been pioneers in this so that we can regulate the hydrocarbon industry. We are also pioneers when it comes to the distribution of renewable energy, and this is being added to the public-private network. We are also the authors. We are talking about the regulatory framework for the promotion of green hydrogen and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. And these are steps that are important, that are going to be developed at the territorial level, but they need international investment so that we can carry this out. So that's why we need to have this possibility of reestablishing the strength and the federalism that the Argentinian provinces have so that we can fight against the climate changes. So I open the debate this way. Please allow me to do that because we need the environmental issue to become a state policy. And so governments are temporary, and we need to reinforce in the specific case of Argentina So with our federalism, we need to allow the national governments to develop themselves according to their own decisions when it comes to energy matters. To sum up, I thank you for all of the experience you're going to share with us, the chats we're going to have, the debates we're going to have. Hello. And I would like to ask you to please help me find answers to the questions I have just placed, okay? How can we, the legislative branches, contribute to the climate multilateral, even when circumstantially we have been facing resistance from the executive branch? The second question, how can we strengthen provincial projects that truly believe in this transition and to go to a greener economy? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your participation, Senator Edith Terenzi. Good morning. My name is Leila Barros. I am a senator. I represent the capital of Brazil, Brasília. I was elected here in Brasília. Welcome to our summit. And I'm the vice chair of the Environment Commission. Welcome to all of Welcome to Brasília. I would like to pass the floor to Senator Alfonso Longton from Chile. And he's from Chile. He's from Chile. Welcome.
Ahí se escucha. Muchas gracias, Leila. En primer lugar, saludar a...
Thank you, Leila. So at first of to greet all of the assistants here. I'm not gonna say their names, I might forget someone. Would like to thank the Senate of the Republic of Brazil for this greeting, and also I'm a Secretary of Climate Change. Allow me to present the Chilean delegation. I have Senator Ricardo Lagos Pepe, the Vice President of the Senate, who is going to give us a speech about certain policies that is very important in Chile. We also have Senator Savi Sandoval, also integrate of the most biodiversity of our country in the region of Aysén. We also have Senator Ivan Flores, who is President of Parliamentary at the moment, and also Juan Pablo Gutierrez, Director of the Institute of Governance of the Andine Parliament, and the other colleagues of this institution. Hello. The debate and what Ana and Tony were taking us towards is extremely challenging. So I want to start my intervention with, or divide it into 4 axes. First of all, that the engagements that are taken on in the Paris Agreement and soon in COP30 require the normative translation that is concrete. I think this is the work, the job we're going to have as legislator, to translate into norms and budgets. That's what we are responsible for. That's why we hope, and it's important that in the work for that we have concrete engagements that will take us to the reduction of emissions and adaptation objectives that are all key. I want to concentrate on 4 axes that are relevant in terms of this journey, especially in the Environment Commission of the Senate of Brazil. I am the President of the Environment and Climate Change of Chile for that. So first what I want to highlight is to translate the international commitments into effective national laws. So we have this state or national question. Chile is one single unit, so we have national laws, but we want laws that would organize us in a normative point and to address sectorial norms. We've created important policy and with good agreements, regardless of the governments that alternate in power every 4 years. the last few years is a position that has won, but we have had continuity policy in terms of energy, transportation, urban planning, water, agriculture, to align them with the law for climate change. I think that for us, the law that was created in 2022 was fundamental. That climate change law is the umbrella that allows us to understand a group of principles and have it as a reference, as a benchmark for the country. Secondly, I think it's important to cooperate with transversal climate content for a better management that is necessary to have a financing and investment in public policies. I think it's important, be we in government or opposition, to demand the executive to apply a green budget and its coherence with the carbon neutral objective with which most countries had advanced towards. We have agreed to the Paris Agreement. I think it's essential to translate it into that. It's also important to strengthen the binding side of the climate change prevention instruments. I think it's really important, since we have here a good quantity of legislators, to share positive experience in energy transition, a reduction of greenhouse gases, in methane issues, and I am just arrived last week. We were in Zimbabwe in COP30 of Ramson with an important debate and engagement of increasing the protection of the ecosystems that promote and climate positive climate changes. So we share with Bolivia and Argentina a group of ecosystems and that have lithium, and we're going to have a huge pressure on the exploitation. I think it's important, therefore, to protect it. So Argentina presented its program for the protection of these ecosystems that is fundamental. They're fragile, important for our economies, but fundamental so that the productive development comes with the environmental protection. The second axis is to reinforce climate multilateralism with parliamentary diplomacy, which is what we're doing here. But parliamentary diplomacy, the capacity that each person has with their territory's representation, can be a climate diplomatic communicator and booster. We're going to have a meeting of the environment ministers soon, but here's the parliamentary diplomacy. And I think it's also important the different instances. I would participate in the Climate Parliament, which is also an international meeting that we're working to join efforts of different actors, be it of Africa or the continents where this is being worked. I think this is important and fundamental to establish groups with the Global South, with legislation exchanges, good practices, including political ones. We have to make the most of this capacity to act jointly. And third point, to strengthen surveillance of environmental questions. We have reports from the Ministry of Environment where we have the obligation that we advance. In the afternoon, if I'm not mistaken, yesterday, the Minister of Environment was going to the Senate to talk about these advances. It's important so that there's a social control from the legislative, but also social control by the citizens. I think it's important to have so that administrators can understand how climate change is being understood. We have the challenge of 2030. And the challenge for the Paris Agreement isn't just for the Ministry of Environment, but the whole interaction of the ministries have a governance and a capacity to influence in these policies. I think it's also important to have climate change that is territorial, whereas divided in states, municipalities, and we have established for each of these instances a climate action program. They have to validate it and look at it with their citizenship and a capacity that isn't just the obligation of a state, ministry of the executive, but that their own regions themselves, but that we have a possibility with the territorial diversity of climate and productive emphasis that we have to undertake forth to push for a climate agenda that is transversal. The Parliament can have a more ambitious agenda, articulating law actions with more transversal support. They can protect strategic ecosystems. I think it's important their territories identify those ecosystems. Here we're sharing, we have colleagues from Argentina, but we have unique ecosystems, for example, the pitlands, a very particular ecosystem. We have the wetlands, the pitlands, and they're unique ecosystems that we recognize the fundamental rights such as water, clean air, as intergenerational justice as well. Without forgetting that we're also pushing initiatives to understand that the environment also has a fundamental role within the cities. We're now facing heat waves, having a great population in the cities. We're protecting a lot of ecosystem, but we also have environmental effect where they have the loss of biodiversity within the cities themselves that is no longer sustainable. On Monday, we started discussing, at least in Chile, of green infrastructure law and this urban infrastructure that allows to have it within the city, have the space of advancing in elements of more equity, environmental equity, and to finish and then to receive initiatives, just to signal some initiatives we have in the Parliament that we're trying to take forwards within our NDC and our environmental commitments. The protection of glaciers. We share a good part of the Andes mountain ranges that of these solid water areas, but also the pitlands that is unique, especially in the extreme south of the continent, but also present in Colombia, in Peru, and in different places. Advancing in ocean protection, where Chile is leading and that Senator Lago is going to present. And also, allow me to share a law in Zimbabwe at the COP of Ramsar. Urban wetlands, the ecosystems within the cities, the relationship is just understanding the environment of what is outside it, where we have a huge percentage living in urban centers, where we have to protect the biodiversity in those areas as well. And just to end, I know they did, it was in Trelew. We were able to receive in Ramsar in Zimbabwe the naming of the first two Ramsar cities of the wetland cities in South America. The city of Valdivia and Trelew. There's also a city in Chubut that is a very important instrument to identify those cities that have advanced in regards to protection of these ecosystems that allow us to have international recognition with a series of engagements that come forward towards the territory. It's a pleasure. I did not know that you're from Trelew specifically, but so we will see each other in these cities. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, senador
Thank you
Afonso
very
Dureste
much, Senator
pelas
Alfonso
considerações
de
e
Oreste
agradeço a todos os seus
Longton. I would
panelistas.
like to thank
Eu quero
both
aqui
panelists.
fazer
And
apenas
now
uma
here,
menção
I
à
would like to
senadora
mention
Edith, quando ela faz
Senator Edith
essa
when
reflexão com
she carries
preocupação
out
pelo
this
momento que passa a
reflection,
Argentina.
concerned about the moment
E
Argentina is going
enquanto a
through.
senadora estava
And
falando,
while
eu
the
passou
senator was
filme na minha
speaking,
cabeça,
I
porque
saw a
foi
movie
um
in my
presidente
mind
da Comissão do
because
Meio
I
Ambiente
was
no
the chair
Senado
of the
muito
Environment
duro
Commission of the
no
Senate
governo passado,
in
nos
the
dois primeiros
past
anos. E nós
administration
tivemos
during the
também
first 2 years. And
momento
we
no
also faced a
governo
moment
negacionista,
of
né, que acabou com planos de combate ao
negationist
desmatamento no passado.
government. They said that deforestation was not happening. They were criminalizing NGOs. They issued decrees, presidential decrees that impacted and damaged environmental laws, and the position of the parliament was very strong those via a legislative decree to suspend all of the measures that were violating that constitutional right, because that's part of our federal constitution. All of us have the right to a healthy environment, and besides that, everything that was necessary, me as a senator, I filed many lawsuits, inconstitutional lawsuits, and many other lawsuits, so that the judiciary branch at the right time could play its role, to exercise this role to invalidate laws that would violate or breach any agenda, any environmental agenda. I believe that Brazil, just like the Latin American and Caribbean countries, they have to unite so that we can strengthen more and more our democracies, our organizations, so that somehow we can try to find a way to mitigate damages, but not only mitigate damages, but also to have a proactive action or behavior so that we can have the right to a healthy environment respected. So receive my solidarity to the Argentinian people, to the Argentinian Senate. But there is a sentence from a poet that I love, Tiago de Mello. We don't have new pathways. Everything that is new is our way to walk. So the new way of walking, maybe we can pave our future. And because the right to a healthy environment is a human right, and it's related to all of us, regardless of our political standpoint. And the world is going through this process of negation, of denial. We have been seeing the work of the USA. Paris Agreement. This is going to have repercussions in other negationist countries. And who is going to suffer? The population at the world level, and mainly who? The most vulnerable people, the poorest people. And as we have religious racism, we also have an environmental racism, because whenever there is a disaster, as we have had in the state of Minas Gerais in Brazil, Miraí, Cataguases, Cocais, Brumadinho, Mariana, the population that most suffers are the people who live on the slopes, on the mountains, those who live in the suburbs. So this is our job. Being a citizen is not only living in a society, but transforming the society, preserving the environment. So I'm adding myself to you as the chair of this commission, jointly with Senator Leila, who has already been the chair of this commission. Now she is my vice chair, and in any way we can contribute to help Argentina, we're here. Brazil is also going through delicate moments in other spheres. We have already overcome this negationist part or time, but we are trying to influence what is the most sacred for us inside a democracy, because this is a constitutional premise. In our federal constitution says that our branches, they are independent and harmonious among themselves. So the head of a foreign country would like to blackmail the leader of our country so that he can have some kind of interference in our judiciary branch. We don't do that because we have to defend our democracy and all the institutions of our democracy. There are people who cannot live in a democracy. It's easy to defend dictatorships, living in a democracy. It's difficult for you to defend democracy being in a dictatorship. And the way for you to eradicate democracies is attacking the branches, attacking the organizations, the agencies, weakening the surveillance agencies. Here in Brazil, we're going to die, but we're always going to defend the harmonious operation of the branches, the executive, the legislative, the judiciary working together. And we are defending everything which is the backbone of the rule of law, which is the federal constitution of Brazil. Thank you very much. Now I would like to pass the floor to Ms. Ana Toni, if she's still here with us, and if she can give her contribution so that we can strengthen ourselves and become stronger. So once again, Senator, I give you my solidarity so that we can reach solutions, so that we can preserve the environment, mitigate the damages, but not only mitigating them, I'm saying this again, but having a more proactive behavior.
Senador Contarato, fiquei muito feliz de poder
Senator Contarato, I'm really happy to be able to listen to the senator and also Senator from Chile, Senator Afonso, Senator from Argentina, and receive my solidarity as well. We have gone through that, and something good is that we have left this. There is a proverb by Gandhi that I like a lot, that at the beginning they ignore us, and then after that they start laughing at us, making jokes. We environmental experts, we see that, but when they see they have to take us seriously, they start attacking us, and finally we win the battle. So I believe this is the process, yes, to keep our hope that this difficult moment is going to pass. We are also facing negationists, not only as described by the senator from Argentina, but there is a new environmental and climate negationism that puts in doubt the alternatives, the solutions. Solar panel, wind energy, this is not safe. Or when they analyze organic foods, they say, no, maybe it's not so clean. So there's a new kind of negationism, which is placing in doubt the climate solutions that we're also going to have to face head on. And I believe that Brazil has vast experience. We faced a difficult moment, and we're going to have to use the instruments that Senator Contarato mentioned, legal instruments, parliamentary instruments. And I loved it when the senator from Argentina said, how can we mobilize the cities, the subnational government? I would like to add the private sector and the population, because in Brazil we saw this, and also in the USA. The subnational governments, some members of the private sector, and certainly the civil society, together with senators that maintain the light shining inside the American Parliament. And so, for this purpose, COP30 is going to be a huge platform, because during COP30, not only will the countries be represented, but also the observers are going to be essential in this process. So having members of parliament, Congress people, senators, representatives from subnational governments, having the private sector, and what we look at what's happening in the USA and what's happening in Argentina. So these are not the countries that are against the climate change. It's one administration that was elected, but the Argentinian population, the representatives from the national congresses, they are going to be more than welcome to COP30. We're going to have many, many pavilions to welcome you, to learn from you, to exchange experiences. So I truly hope that the senators from the region show up and come to COP30. And as mentioned by our colleague from Chile, it's by looking, by improving our internal legislations, national legislations, that we're going to be able to move forward. So he mentioned methane, the Status Treaty. So in Latin America, if it is approved by the parliaments in Latin America, this is going to become a huge advance, and it's going to be delivered at COP30 if we can approve the Status Treaty. That's how we're going to build a future, and the transition is inevitable. Yes, they hinder us, but it's going to be inevitable. And as mentioned by Senator Contarato, and many times said by Senator Leila Barros, together we're going to go far. And COP30 is going to be a wonderful moment of this global effort of all of us showing that we are together, and together we have the power to change. So thank you once again for the invitation. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave the session. Thank you very much.
Eu queria, antes de finalizar essa.
Before ending this meeting, I would like to hand the word to have 3 minutes to do their exposition. There are more events this afternoon. And once more, putting the Commission of the Environment of the Federal Senate at your disposal so that we can truly move forward in the preservation and environmental agenda, and also that we can have a COP30 successful. And I have been in the state of Pará in person to accompany all the procedures they're undergoing there. I was really happy with what's happening. Of course, we always have issues, but it's important the world understand and see this, because we preserve the environmental agenda. We have all the biodiversity in Latin America and Caribbean, and Brazil is no different. But we must also have a compensation for all we do in regards to all the attacks the world exerts in that agenda. So, President of the Environment Commission, Argentina, you have the floor. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the solidarity. Also, for Anna's words, it's important to emphasize the commitment that the Argentine Parliament has, that we have a big quantity of national senators and legislators that are committed to the climate agenda and the respect of the agreements to which Argentina has entered. We are certain that we are going to fight, and perhaps we're going to do it a little bit, take a bit longer, but it's going to be a bit harder, but that does not mean that Argentina is simply going to give up on participating in this global society that needs mitigate the climate crisis. So I thank you for your words. I like the strength that you gave it, Mr. Chair. And through these 2 days, we're going to try to ensure that you have some things more specifically in the main issues that we've been working on in the Argentinian Parliament. because the Argentine Parliament and the Commission of the Environment of the Senate is going to continue working, of course, and we're going to put our utmost efforts to ensure that we respect all the engagements.
Muito obrigado. E com
Thank you very much. And I hand over to Senator Alfonso Longton.
Ureste Longton.
It's Longton is my mother's family name, President of Environment Commission of Chile. I would also like to thank for this debate. I also hadn't mentioned that our delegation all has support of our ambassador for Chile and Brazil. I think the challenge for COP30 is to advance, and in legislation, and Anna said it very well, we have to advance in implementation and acceleration. I think these are fundamental elements to come to Brazil with this COP30, that we already have a sufficient time for development, but is to cross the information and the different nations that we have to accelerate implement the Paris Agreement. The negationisms, the backstepping, and solutions that I think have to don't have space in the debate. Climate change is going to affect tens of places that are not emitters, and they're gonna affect them. Already studying, I think it's an important debate from a legislative point of view. The amount of people, especially in islands and those sectors with coasts, they're going to be amazingly affected. All those places already have 40, 45 degrees of temperature. The melting of the ice caps, the glaciers, the productive changes is something that we have to make it clear that do not distinguish between governments. And I think with the advance of the Paris Agreement and such, must be the time when we implement this. And I'm placing myself as a legislator here. We must have the agreement to participate so that in general isn't affected with these greenhouse gases, with governors that think it's not going to affect them. It's a global threat. We also have to face it as Parliament. Thank you very much. I'd like to clarify there were several participations to the e-citizenship portal, but I'm going to request that the team of the Environment Commission, that they answer them soon after through the effective channels to answer all the questions. And before we finish, I submitted to the deliberation of the plenary for approval of the meeting that took place yesterday, the 5th of August. Madam Senators and Senators that are here, it is approved and will be published in the federal site. And I declare the present meeting closed.